Uh-oh. Here comes a very horrible emotion sauntering down the street. He's a huge and lumpy cloud of indistinct grayish, blackish muck, with bits of undigested food and filth all roiling around inside and spilling out all over the sidewalk in little pieces that get up and run alongside him then on speedy, tiny feet, and all of them are coming right at me. Back, I say, back! As I strike a terrifying ninja pose, I am stunned by the perfect samurai sword that materializes in my hands. Swoosh I go, and swoosh does not bother them at all. I feel my own blood run warm and sticky down my chest. This is getting serious. So I call in cops, and they come running. But it's the Keystone cops, and they run into each other and fall down a huge gaping pipe hole and are no help at all. And now I'm engulfed by the garbage mass of this emotion and feel sick and heavy with regret and grief, and my face is puffy and my hands are dead. The sword hangs limply at my side. I can dimly see the tall buildings all around through the swirling muck. But just knowing they are out there, gleaming happily in the warm sun, is enough to kick me into high gear. The sword rises and slices of its own accord, my own strength coming from the strength that is the strength of the sun, that great, strong man. Oh, thank you, Wallace Stevens. This will get me through. It is the power of the sun and of the words that call him into being. I will live to fight another day, and will not be doomed forever by the endless troops that are charging down the city streets to do battle with us all. And I am so happy I read that poem a very long time ago, before I knew how much I would need it. Something. Some days you're just not plugged into anything, and I don't know where the plug is anyway. Maybe you just push ahead anyhow, like you would if you were in the army and they told you to go to the front, even though nothing made any sense to you at all. Life seems to be like that a lot of the time. Like now I am on my knees in the mud looking for something, but I don't know what. And I am just hoping that I will know it if I find it. Like there are some sapphires here, but I have no interest in them whatever. I wonder what I would find surprising and interesting. I think right now nothing probably, so really it's not that there's anything wrong with the world, it's me that's got the problems. Maybe I should just stop crawling, but I'm pretty sure something is behind me. Maybe that's what keeps people going. Even if I found a door into a secret garden right now, I'm pretty sure I'd pass it up, just not wanting to bother with it. Maybe this is why I like to think about art, because right now, for instance, I can see a really big painting in my mind by Cy Twombly, who keeps intruding on my reveries. And I don't know why, but there's just something about that stuff he did that bothers me. And I guess I'll just keep crawling here, looking for that something. Art history. We make little noodly marks on paper, rub, scratch. We like doing this, and we find we are uncomfortable being somewhere else. Hey, over here, they say. One gets confused with a multitude, or even 3 or 2 voices. No, 2 is okay, but more than that, and we get lost and don't know who is thinking or saying what. I know why that is, I say, but no one is listening. They're all trying to pry the cover off the manhole in the street. It is very heavy, and they struggle. Look, the reason is that I need the eye to hold things sort of lightly. It's not authoritarian or patriarchal at all. It's the opposite. If we have several of us at once, then we each have to stay sort of in one region of hyperspace, or we will all run together. Whereas if I have just me, then I can go anywhere and be anything all at once. Now make really big looping marks in pencil here. Whoop, whoop, whoop. So if there is just me, I am free. But if there is more than me, I have to keep track of us so that one of us is predominantly yellow and oblong, and another green and helical, you see. And now you press really hard and wibble the pencil in this one place to make a really dark ovalish sort of mark, almost right through the paper, and then scratch in places with your fingernail. This paper should be very long, like a Chinese scroll, so you can just keep rolling it out, and it curls back up behind you as you go, like the past, disappearing at your back. And you only have dim memories of things that just happened, or you think they did, and you can't see ahead because those are scribbles yet to be made on parts of the scroll that aren't unrolled yet. You could try making one long, continuous, wavy line like breadcrumbs so you could find your way back, only time doesn't work that way. Wow, and if all of us are working on this same sheet, then I am really uncomfortable with that. I mean, it's hard enough keeping track with just one of me, and a team is hard to visualize. Like everybody talking at once, they have the cover off now, and they're climbing down in there, all of them, and everybody is bringing a fistful of pencils. I don't have a good feeling about this. Mixed media. A big splash of medium yellow right here, with starred edges and a couple drips going down about half an inch, with just the yellow, nothing else. I feel much better already, and so will you. I have dipped my arms in, and I am covered up to each elbow almost, and then whirling around with my arms out in the air, a few drops fly off and hit the walls. No, not walls. I'm at a beach where yellow belongs. The tide is out, the sand is flat, the sky is blue, no clouds, a few gulls, 3 sailboats far out. A few drops of yellow spattered on the sand, and I have to wonder why people don't do this more often. Since everything is right here all the time, I will stand up straight now and walk along the sand, wondering who I will meet, with a gentle, warm wind in my face, and we hear the gulls now far above, and notice that towards shore to the right is a thin line of darkness along the horizon. This makes me uneasy, and I wonder, does this ever happen to you, that suddenly your eye gets joggled in the world too, just very slightly, so that you think, oh no, here comes insanity, and you get really scared? I mean, generally you don't lose your mind, but you do get pretty nervous about it disappearing, like it sort of did for me once long ago now. And I still get kind of weird about it sometimes, knowing how fragile my particular eye is, and yours too, I would think, though my father was pretty well anchored to the rocks, which was kind of reassuring now that I think about it, and was not at all phenomenologically challenged like me, always wondering when stuff will lose its contact with me, which is why I like Breton saying we should penetrate the world as passionately as possible with ever-increasing precision and desire to get to the real reality. Like I'm pretty sure that line of darkness along the horizon, as far as we can see, is all spiked with lances, and it is the main phalanx of the Roman army, come to challenge the great dominions of the sea. But here I think penetration will maybe not be too effective. And if I were Caesar, I think I might try some other approach, like a huge swarm of marine lovers plunging into the depths of the grand sea. Their flaxen hair flows out around them in the swift, warm currents to meet Poseidon and Leviathan and charm them into, if not submission, then at least into calm, and the blue-green sea will dissolve into a light only possible in watercolors, so that the entire scene has to be rendered in mixed media, which is pretty much what God did in the first place, a high-drama light show with words and music, very operatic much of the time, except not too much Greek chorus-type narration going on. It's pretty postmodern, I think, right from the first Big Bang, the storyline being not all that clear to me anyway. And as for the voice of the narrator, it seems to fade in and out of the audible range at random, kind of like the attention that I mostly call me and that I have kind of at last given up on pinning down to any place with one of those lances, which do have the advantage, however, of being easy to render, even in pencil. Scribble. It's spring finally here, and the ladybugs and wasps are climbing all over our windows. Those Coreads, too, though I have never looked them up, they are particularly appealing, and far less common than the ladybugs, which are actually beetles, as I suspect most folks know, so the air is warmer, which is a great blessing, and I am interested now in scribbling and writing on paper, which I am not doing right now, but I am interested in the idea of it, which is just like dried bark as it comes off the old logs behind the shed. The old gray bark is scribbled over by beetle larvae, bark beetles of many different kinds, and the bark burns well and is like paper, and the rough surface of it damp in places, dry in others, and really very complicated in texture, both visual and tactile. It seemed to me a little while ago, as I got those 18-inch dried branches with their peeling bark, that they were so wondrously variegated in surface and form, and replete with a quite lively and diverse biota of insects, bacteria, fungi, lichens, not to mention viruses, that you could spend an entire afternoon looking at them and touching them carefully, and then thinking about what you were seeing, that it seemed just like scribbling and scratching on some really excellent artist's paper, something made specially out of wood or lined linen, but having a very rough and beautiful cream-colored surface that would shade over quite imperceptibly into the textures and colors of bark. And that calls up, somehow, the idea and image of a variety of artists' pencils of many kinds, charcoals too. I wish I had a set now on a very large piece of fine paper that I could just scribble on, making marks of a great variety of sorts with different colors and pressures of my fingers. There would be some continuum between the paper then and the bark and its inhabitants. It is the textures, however, that feel most crucial, even vital, in the sense that I cannot live without them at all anymore. I feel I need to chew on the colors and the marks and to rub the bark against my face, eating the textures, as the beetle larvae do as they make their way blindly through their one-dimensional, lightless world. I, too, want to rub my long self, my smooth skin, against the roughnesses of their world. This is the same feeling that makes me need to scribble and to draw things that make vague sense or seem nonsensical just beyond the edges of human meaning. The writing and the meanings then are physical, like textures, like rough food you need to chew and that feels gritty, and like dirt, which comes in more varieties than there are kinds of artists' pencils or charcoals or paints. The colors of dirt, of soils, of earth are yellows and browns and grays, but this barely scratches the surfaces of things. The wood and the barks outside are on their way to becoming dirt, becoming soils, and this is not a simplification, but a further elaboration, a ramification of their substance into kinds of grain, into sizes of particulate being, each size having color, shape, taste, smell, making the shaft of a pencil possible, making me want to confuse eating and scribbling, eating and writing on creamy rough paper. Writing has no relation now to thinking, but to the things the writing is on and with, and it is instrumental quite literally, while thinking seems to happen somewhere else. and the recording instrument irrelevant. And there is something true in that, because I am not writing this on paper or bark or any tactile surface at all, in fact, and somehow this liberates me to feel these desires, to lick the bark, chew the paper, stab at the rough surfaces with brown shaded soft pencils. I would make a scribbled oval in brown. I see the pieces of color breaking into fragments, as they must, against the gravel-like surfaces, and it is this that makes me want to chew them, as I perhaps would not be liberated to do were I to have a fistful of earth-toned pencils in my hands. I fear strongly and with rising panic that I would be overwhelmed by the tactile presence of the paper, the shaded writing instruments, by the flood of words that would turn to meaningless scribbles just over the rims of meaning that I would have to chew and scribble gibberish while howling, stabbing at the paper with my clawed hands, full of pencils, full of colors, bereft of words, only scrawling scribbles, furious ovoids, harsh slashes at the vast roughness of empty space. Sigh. Each line is now the actual experience with its own innate history. It does not illustrate. It is the sensation of its own realization. And I have a hard time now because I can get mentally ill. I usually have to go to bed for a couple days. Physically, I can't handle it. I can't build myself. My mind goes blank. It's totally blank. I cannot sit and make an image. I cannot make a picture unless everything is working. It's like a state. Thick impasto, burnt umber, dark, nearly black, so thick, taller than a man, it seems. We're in it over our heads. It's luscious. You reach down and press the stylus into it and begin to draw, scraping away to the bright canvas underneath, fast enough that waves are thrown up to either side. They curl beautifully in their own time, gracefully parting like the Red Sea. And as they crest and break, dark letters take shape in the glistening fluid, rising like creatures from the sea. Everything slow motion, time irrelevant. Letters are forming themselves into clusters, into swirls, into lines. They are rising and breaching, dripping with afterbirth. They lift and plunge upon the waves. They howl and cry. Some take flight, some dive. Some cavort on the rolling seas. In the air they burst, releasing violent streams of yellow, bloods, green bloods, spattered bloods of reds and blues, dripping all over the world. Hear their cries of joy, of anguish. Listen to their wailing as they birth their hails of wonder as they die. Now, they cry, now. Jump into the breach. Touch me, cries the sea. Sing me, cries the air. Feed on us, cried the magical, barely legible, indecipherable, untranslatable words. Illumination. I just keep seeing that rabbit, chewing her grass or whatever it is they eat, and looking through the spider web towards a rainbow. Something strange peeks through here, or is faint on the breeze. I'm not getting it. I'm getting close, but I'm not getting it. Everything's all tight. The air, the sky, the sounds. Oh, the sounds of the jerks next door, but then they don't really bother me much anymore. I only wish they did, then there'd be some reason I'm upset. I'm not getting it. It's right here. I know it is. expectant I am edgy, waiting for something, an opened bodice, a raised skirt, but get not even an ankle. It's not that anyway, though it seems like it ought to be. It's not her. And oh God, it's not a dark abyss, though I have misjudged it as exactly that. It is the nothing. Yes, it's the nothing, but not the abyss. The rabbit just sits there, erect, and chews her greens. You know how their little whiskers move so fast. She sits there looking through the web at rainbows. But her attention is diffuse. She's always wary of the plunge from above and the fatal rush from tall grass. Her attention is divided between the wind and the everything all around, and the nothing towards the rainbow. She doesn't see the rainbow. It's not important, just like God is not important. Relaxed to near transparency, she could fly off in the blink of an eye. Her mind is clear and empty. Death comes like lightning and the end of the world, and its beginning are singing in her bones. Cinema Verite. Look, while you sit in a room or anywhere outside, there is this zooming, booming going on all around all the time. How anyone ever makes it through the day, I'll never know. Well, I do sort of know how I do it. You batten down most of the hatches, but you never get them all, so seawater rushes in, roiling your mind and absolutely soaking your clothes. People seem not to notice that, but they do think you are sort of not paying attention. But you are. You are. But just to things I guess they don't see, though why not, I do not know. One way to manage is to focus on tiny things, as they make nice containers. Not so much seems to squeeze through at once, though mostly all of it can get in there if you're not careful. Mostly it's a tremendous pressure that holds up the walls and the landscapes. It keeps the air in place and the ground stays put because of it. And if you just kind of lope along like we generally do through the day, doing stuff and listening to people, going to work and eating, it's okay. But then if you stop doing that, you notice that the horizons are all bulging in towards you just a little bit. And that's it. It's that stuff wanting to get into play, really. There's nothing malevolent about it. They just want to fill that empty space. Pop, pop. Sometimes one gets through and you find a crushed doll's head by the side of the road that somebody ran over. That was one of them getting in. Or am I just about to have the thought of sauerkraut? There it was, and nothing explains that. It just got in here. It's pretty tiring. Or the little toys in cereal boxes. I mean, those are pretty surreal and make no sense whatsoever, and that's where they come from. Christ, just feeling it all out there is pretty enervating, but then sometimes it is the most exciting thing in the world. Today it's mostly kids' toys, like rocking horses and plastic dragons and red spoons for honey and cheap plastic sand toys for the beach, and now there is sand stuck all over me and melted vanilla ice cream and discarded popsicle sticks. Just junk, you know. We'll have to wash it off over at the public showers. But aside from that kind of annoyance, it's mostly benign. Only now and then, and you can sort of tell when something is coming, something nasty comes along, like monsters, literal ones, or some worse thing, like some awful feeling from the past, with sticky Velcro parts that seem to catch all sorts of universal things to it, like when my father had heat stroke, or the dog got hit by the car, or when the towers went down. Sometimes those kind of all get mixed up and come in too, and suddenly there's dead babies everywhere, and you have to hang on and wait for the next cold front just to keep your nose down, do your job, wash the dishes. Maybe a little TV would be okay, or a movie. Good movies are good because they have a small frame and are creative. So there has been a lot of careful selection that happened to make them, and that means there's really not all that much in them compared to the world. And so they're safe. Point of view. The viewpoint moves rapidly along the length of the python. The pale patterns thrill, moving so fast in the heavy shade. It's humid and smells like leaf mold. There is no breeze. Shooting now off the nose of the giant reptile, the reader finds a new sense of freedom. The trees tilt as you rush through the jungle, banking sharply left, then right, to avoid the lianas and the telephone poles up ahead. Don't get tangled in the wires, which are crazy tangled already by themselves. Uh-oh, the viewpoint is descending rapidly. We are frightened by this and sure it will crash. Here comes the asphalt pavement and the road, spinning wildly round and round. Brace yourselves for impact, but nothing happens. Suddenly it's very dark and we are dead. Did the power fail? No, we're flying underground. Past and through sewers, subways, buried electric cables. Now deeper into solid rock, the gneiss shines and glitters. Now it's getting very hot as we near the center of the earth. The light is getting better, but it's red and almost black. There should be an awful lot of pressure here, but you can't tell because it's only a viewpoint moving in your imagination, which is nice because otherwise you'd have been dead long ago. We are now in the exact center of the earth where there is absolutely no gravity. And if it weren't so dense here, you could float like an empty space. And everywhere is up. There is no down. So we tunnel towards the surface at a magnificent speed, getting heavier and heavier as we go, or we would be if we had bodies, which we clearly can't. Anyway, it's cooling down and getting less dense and less radioactive, and we shoot up finally through the crust at a spreading plate boundary undersea, and stop briefly to survey the deep-sea communities of tube worms and things at the vents. But disappointingly, they show no surprise at all in seeing us. In fact, we are feeling increasingly despondent as we near the surface, bubbles rising around us, and the sun seen through rippling waves. We breach and swivel like flying fish, a multitude of us leaving trails in the sky like the blue angels. We roar in perfect acrobatic formation, barrel rolling through the liquid air. But I, at least, am dissatisfied and frustrated by the experience of not having a body. This kind of travel lacks substance. And as close as we have been on this trip, we shared the exact same viewpoint pretty much the whole time, I think, and you can't get any closer than that. How many angels can you get on the head of a pin, as an old girlfriend once said to me with regret? I always thought we would sleep together. Anti-Aleph. So if several of you would line up here, and you too take my hands, and everybody hold hands in a line, we can all move forward together through the field, making sure we don't miss anything. At first I thought we'd be dancing in the sun or something, but in a flash it became clear that we need to be looking for the body of a little girl, though it is perhaps possible she is still alive. I didn't really want this to be so dark, but at least it's a beautiful day as we move slowly on through the tall grass. Nobody's saying anything. We're all nervous. Who would want to be the one to see it? Or maybe we will be thrilled to find she is okay. I remember that time I nearly bush-hogged right over that snapping turtle. He must have been heading off on a really long trip to some distant pond. I had no idea they do that. Now off on my left, someone shouts, and I don't think I can do this, but I'm supposed to be in charge. So as everybody stops, I release my companion's hands and walk towards the small group that has formed here around this little clearing in the grass. As I come close, I realize that there is nothing there. I mean, actually nothing. It's not even black. It's a blank, a nothing, like what you see out of the back of your head. It would be sort of like the navel of a dream, that one place that is the source of everything. It isn't black like soot or darkness. It is simply not there at all, that kind of nothing. And everyone is confused and looking at each other. They don't quite know how to respond. It's like you can't look in there, but you don't know you're not looking. You just see other things slant. And everybody feels really odd and uncanny, but nobody knows why. I guess I'm the only one who kind of understands. So I say, look, I guess there's nothing to see here, so maybe we should just keep moving. But this I know is not going to do, because we are at the center of the world right here. And all stories orbit this spot. Nobody moves anyway, and I suddenly realize that everyone is not seeing something different. And they are all riveted to this spot, which is the center of their lives. It is not a star. It is not a black sun. It is literally nothing, and the power source of everything that is. But why did I think we were looking for a little girl? I think that mystery girl is neither dead nor alive, perpetually both and either, like Schrodinger's cat, is like the magnet, the token, the sign for this nothing, and she is as close to it as I can ever get. Thanks. The world is not hugging me very much at all right now, and I sort of wish somebody would, because I just want to go back to sleep, or have somebody hold my hand. But instead of that, I guess I will see if I can get a little help from the wider world. Like, for instance, let's try this. Right now I am swimming in warm water. There is no blood, so I do not expect sharks to come. Still, I am finding it hard to breathe, and my face is all puffy, and I am enclosed in a soft shell like a crab, but I don't especially feel like I want to let it harden, because I like the idea of being able to feel the warm water and anything in it against my skin. So I pull myself along the bottom with my 8 legs. The light is strong, the water blue, the coral soft and fuzzed with minute tentacles that retract as I get near. The fish dart around me as if I were just some huge object. They do not care for me at all. I am an object in the floating world. This is pleasant enough, even beautiful, but not sufficient. I will let the water open a big sphincter 3 feet across, and I will shoot through it into a black space where I see lamps and tables and chairs in a Victorian motif, and an old man's bald head sitting in an overstuffed chair in front of a fire. How did I get here? I don't remember, but I think everything is connected. The way it was in that horrifying episode of Tom Terrific and his mighty wonder dog Manfred that I saw long, long ago on Captain Kangaroo, which is supposed to be for kids, but it really weirded me out then, and I've remembered it for 50 years. He was in a long, narrow tunnel somewhere that got narrower and narrower, and he had to shrink down, smaller and smaller, I think, so claustrophobic, and I think he was lost and maybe frightened. I certainly am. And suddenly there was an end to the tunnel, which released us into a huge domed room. We can breathe. The constriction is gone. We are free at last. But then we see that all around the sloping walls there are hundreds of arched doorways, exactly like the one from which we have just emerged, and we do not know which one it was. And we spin in terrified confusion. We are in the endless labyrinth, and there is nothing whatever in this room, and no reason whatever to choose one door rather than another. The entire universe is made of these endless tunnels and empty rooms. We will go on this way forever, hoping there is something to be found. If it had been in color, it would not, perhaps, have been so frightening, but it was black and white on my grainy little TV, and the flatness of the cartoon contrasts violently with the feeling of infinite depth that those tunnels achieve. And I will wander in that featureless maze for all eternity. I wonder now at the intentions of the captain. Maybe he was a minion of the devil trying to destroy my mind. But now I see that it is a cartoon, and the feelings it evokes in me are not necessarily hitched to ultimate truths about the cosmos. And there are stories that I like rather better. And as a matter of fact, I am now quite sure that if we pick one of those doorways at random, we will find not another empty room, but something else entirely, if for no other reason than that it takes far, far too much energy to keep everything out of any space of any size at all, and that the simple, almost Quaker, even Shaker-style simplicity of those black and white line drawings of that empty domed room is charged with powers far beyond those of mortal men, and that Tom Terrific's funnel-shaped hat was always spouting sparks and fire. His head was bursting with images, with heat, with colors, with excitement, with all the mysterious energies of life exploding off the pages, off the screens, and into my heart. If I had only been able to receive it. Why I didn't, I don't know, but now I finally see that gift of the strangeness of those images, the magic of that empty, colorless dome with an infinity of openings leading out to all the limitless worlds beyond the terrors of that claustrophobic passage into clarity and light, which is only the anteroom, the chamber of stillness at the center of things. And I say now belatedly, thank you. Thank you, Tom. You are terrific.